Welcome everyone. Happy Sunday morning to y'all. My name is Kevin with the Dzogchen Foundation, and I'm going to be hosting for today and helping run the tech. Give me a moment here to just make sure everybody's making their way into the room. Yeah, so excited to practice with you guys today, and a couple things just to let you know about in terms of what's on deck and what's coming up. The last masterclass of this series that Lama is doing is coming up shortly on April 22nd. Living Up to Death. I love that title. And so this masterclass series has been going for a while. This is the last in the series. A new series will be starting in September, but in terms of jumping in and taking advantage of these, you don't have to have taken all of them to join in. You can join in at any one that you want. So if that's of interest, you can register at dzogchen.org. And I'm going to share one more as well. We also have, as many of you may know from the email, or if you've been coming to more than a couple of these town halls, then you'll probably have heard about this, but we have 2 day-long retreats that are coming up, one on April 29th and one on June 10th. And if you register for both of them, you do get a discount. So take a look at those. That's a great time to be able to drop into deeper practice than just an hour here on Sunday mornings. So I think I'm going to be joining those myself. So that's it in terms of what's on deck and what's ahead. Today we are joined by Suzanne Woodland, who will be leading us in practice. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
So good morning here on the East Coast. Still morning. Lovely to see you. So I am taking this moment to let my attention drop into my seat. When I have these opportunities, my energy tends to come up. So you can come along with me and let yourself just sit in your seat. Take those deep breaths. And arrive. And I love it because it's just that simple sometimes, isn't it? Just that moment to drop into the body, to drop onto the seat, to relax and smile. And this is so much of what my moment-to-moment practice is like. Just that drop. That deep breath. The not doing. And the just being. I don't want to say, okay, now we're done. Because it's that exquisite and really in some ways that easy. As Lama always says, it's so close, we miss it. So I sat in on Lama's masterclass yesterday, where he spent quite some time talking about Mahasiddhis and telling stories of some of the great adepts. And I thought I'd pick up some of those threads a little bit. So for those of you, I mean, I've got my little name across the bottom that says Suzanne Woodland. Yep, that's the name. And for those of you who don't know, I live a very, in some ways, ordinary life. So I work full-time in municipal government. I have kids. They're grown and out of the house, but as everyone knows, they tend to come back or call you or need money, even when they're out and supposedly on their own. So yeah, a very ordinary life. And yet each moment seems extraordinary. So I've been practicing for a very long time, although not long enough some days. And somewhere around the 2000s, when I found myself unexpectedly pregnant with a second child, when my first child was already 7, 8, and I had this path in my head, like, oh, as soon as that child's a little older, I'll take those month-long retreats and I'll, be able to live a more traditional, if you will, Buddhist life. I had this little path in my head and a rigorous course of study, which I was engaged in and was planning to mature, shall we say. I had a view and a plan, and then conditions happen and that plan has to be reevaluated. And so it wasn't too long as I wrestled with my changed conditions that I made a commitment that my householder conditions, my normal, everyday, just like most people here in the States anyways, was not going to interfere or be an impediment to practice, to living the life that I knew I could live in these extraordinary moments. I just needed to take ownership of each moment. Lay down the plans, all the views about who I thought I needed to be and what my practice needed to look like. And just take ownership of each moment. And that has served me extraordinarily well over the years. And so, Lama Surya yesterday was really talking about that integration and enhancement. And really one of the biggest steps I made was, again, back in 2000, when I took ownership. And so the stories of the Mahasiddhas, from the past can be very inspiring, but sometimes can feel a bit distant. So I thought I could share with you the little pieces that I've gleaned over the 23 years or so since I kind of made that commitment to pieces that just seem to help me to really live that integration and enhancement piece to the best of my ability, right? Imperfect, with a big I. And one of the kind of three pieces that I thought might be useful. One is that I've taken a bit of a creative approach. And I'll share a little bit about that later. Two, I've kind of looked outside the box and put myself in uncomfortable places and challenged my views, right? My view about what my spiritual path was going to look like and how I was going to go on 3-month retreats and all of those, views that one tends to have. And having to kind of be in a different space. And sort of the third point was becoming much more comfortable with the unknown, the unexpected, confusion. And so when I look back over the years and kind of my experience now as I move through life, those are kind of three pieces that I found I've woven in ways that, frankly, I think have served me well and continue to serve me well. And so I'm offering if any of them are helpful to you. So I'll just give you an example of the second one, which is kind of some discomfort and kind of moving outside of the box. So my initial practices over the years were with a organization that was more traditional in terms of its a lot of emphasis on the 10 precepts, a lot of training principles, vegetarianism, right livelihood, right speech, do no harm, a lot of emphasis, lovely training ground, very useful. I nothing negative to say, but there's a point at which sometimes you have to kind of recognize that they're training principles, right? So I was I'm fairly physical, and I was looking for a practice about 10 years ago now, maybe a little longer. And I started to take a Tai Chi class with a traditional Chinese teacher. And he had 2 classes, usually going somewhat simultaneously. And the one class, he was doing lots of nice forms and kind of very preliminary practices, very gentle. And I'm older. I'm 59 now. I was in my late 40s, mid 40s then. And so I thought, oh, right, I should take the gentle forms, right? Because that would be more in accord with the traditional thinking of no harm. And yet I kept watching these young men, mostly young men, doing these martial art trainings. Like, I really want to do that training. And at some point, some of the older women who were in the group with me, conditions changed and they dropped out of the group, or I couldn't make that class or something. And I started to then do the martial arts training. I said, I have to let go of this view. And I'm doing this because we hold the ball, right? So automatically I'm talking about Tai Chi and I'm holding the ball. Yeah. And so he said, well, just come and do the martial arts training. And I loved it. I was in my element. Now it helps that in some ways, I'm a lawyer by training in municipal government. And as you would imagine, there's some conflict that tends to arise within that space. And to my delight, I discovered that this martial art training was not teaching me so much about how to attack as to how to not resist and just move the energy. I'm like, oh, this is Dharma with the big D. And it was one of those little opportunities where once I let go of needing to think in the box, there was this opportunity to work for me very physically and in a way that then began to translate into my other spaces, right? Into the way I communicated more and how I interacted. Because sometimes if you put something in the body, boy, don't you own it? Mm-hmm. And so that's one of those pieces. There are other examples, but that's one, which is the minute I kind of let go of that fixed view of what my practice needed to look like and allowed myself to kind of follow my intuition a little bit. And we didn't really hurt each other, it was a little bruising, of course, when you're doing practice, but it was with a good intention and care. You try not to break anyone's bones. And I got such a teaching out of that is translated really lovely just by getting out of that boxed and that fixed view. And so that's one of the pieces that I'm offering you, because sometimes we don't even know we're hanging on to those views. And I'll speak a little bit about the unexpected and being okay with confusion and not knowing. I have, as I said, I spent a number of years in very intense training with another community. And when the time came for me to kind of step back from that other community, I had no idea what was going to unfold. And that was a very uncomfortable and sometimes very lonely place to be, because I let go of a lot of my Sangha connections. And I took everything off my shrine. I tend to occasionally like Buddhist bling, right? I took everything off my shrine, cleared out everything. And then I even thought about, well, what should I do with my cushion? Didn't give up the cushion. Kept sitting, right? Kept sitting. And I let myself sit with the unknown. Where's the next part of the journey? And it was a little while before I stumbled across some of the body practices with Dharma Ocean, which were kind of what I needed in that moment. But it was very uncomfortable. But I highly recommend learning to be more comfortable with the unknown. So now we'll go back to the first item, creativity. As we kind of get ready to do some formal sitting practice. I love the prayers and bits and pieces of Tibetan that I've been learning. I learned to chant in Pali, and I love many of the beautiful prayers that we chant in various languages. I think they're very helpful. They also can get, if you're not comfortable chanting in different languages, or the chanting feels like it's a holdover from some religion that doesn't feel hopeful. But there's no reason why you can't create your own way in. And I learned to do that early. I love the images. Like I said, I got Buddhist bling all over the place. I'm at my sister's house. No, not much Buddhist bling here. My house, lots of Buddhist bling. Love it. But I don't need it. And I create my own. I got my own image of the Buddhas. They may not have all the traditional, garb. And so as we kind of sit, I'm going to ring the bell in a moment. Instead of doing the seven line prayer to Padmasambhava, which I love, I'll ring the bell. We'll get us started. We'll take a few minutes and you find your own prayer or your own vision. And maybe you'll use one of the traditional ones that resonates in your heart. Maybe it's a piece of poetry. Or a painter. Or a view of nature. So if you need to drop the attention into the seat again, arrive, breathe. Just take a few minutes here. And connect in any way that works for you. Maybe it's an image of Tara, or it's the ocean. And then when you're ready, just allowing yourself to let go of that image or the chant, or even just that somatic experience of kind of grace, if you will. supporting you. Dropping into the delight of just sitting. Held by the earth. And just breathing. That exquisite natural breath. And just being. Just being. Ha. Ah. Right there. I don't know how many times I have to tell myself, don't work too hard. Eyes open, ears open, mouth open. Oh, it's amazing how much tension we keep in the jaw. Pores of the skin open. And as often as I need to, I tend to let the attention sink into the lower body, letting myself be held. Back to that just sitting, taking that deep breath, enjoying the out breath, falling off the cliff at the end of the out breath, and just being. So, the other element I often bring to my practice, if you haven't figured that out already, is a fair amount of playfulness. Ooh, what's the space like in front of me? Ooh, beside me, behind me, ooh, below me. With a lot of humor and kindness, trying not to have expectations. Here we go again. Um, I personally think there's a lot of value in many shorties, and I like to borrow something from the Tibetan yoga practices that we teach. And I like to take a moment and shake it all out and start again. If you've got it, shake it. I think there's value in just shaking it up. And sit. Be. Smile. Or don't smile. Isn't it kind of fascinating sometimes when you discover your body is still doing all these little relaxation and kind of micro movements, as you just sit? Very cool. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, I think certainly one of my impediments, but I see it in others from time to time, is that discomfort with the unexpected, the unknown, fusion. And yet it really is such a beautiful place for growth. So keep sitting. Don't get up and run away. And I'll read you this little bit from Rilke. And keep sitting with this. Be patient toward all that is unresolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves. Do not seek the answers which cannot be given you, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the question now. Perhaps you will, gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. Live the question. Live the unknown. So one of the questions for me that I tend to sit with, given my age of soon to be 59, what's next? What's left? Just being okay with, I don't know. We'll see. Smile, relax. Shrug. Just being here with you moment to moment. So if you'd like, wrap yourself in this cloak of kindness for your practice, for your showing up today. And then to open up that cloak and take in the whole world and all beings everywhere and wrap them up in it. So that's one way that I sometimes dedicate the merits of my practice. So if the traditional chant just doesn't resonate with you, it's more than one way. Any way that touches your heart, that feels authentic. Own that moment and the next one. It has been lovely to practice with you. I've left some time at the end if you want to share. I know I kind of took a little different approach, but I hopeful that this has given, it always inspires me, frankly, to share. And that's really how I approach this. I lead in my local library. And so it's pretty funny because they all know what I do for my day job. And then I come in and I'm like, oh yeah, it's been a busy morning. And they're like, oh yeah, I read your name in the newspaper. So yeah, so I just thought I would leave a little time. I can kind of review the couple of points that I have found useful over my years, that maintaining and encouraging a little bit of creativity and authenticity with your own practice, being uncomfortable, getting a little bit outside your comfort zone, being okay in confusion and the unexpected, and really a whole lot of playfulness, which is in part why I love, hanging out with this community in particular. A lot of playfulness here. Although I'll have to say in most communities, it just gets sometimes in a little box. But yeah. So if anyone wants to share or has a question, I'm more than willing to, take it in. So yeah. So I'm seeing notes in the chat. Yeah, so you can send.
Suzanne,
Yep.
there was a request, I don't know if this is possible, to post the Rilke quote in the chat. If
Oh,
or if you want to just read it again, I can search for it online and post it.
Sure, sure. I know, I don't have, I was trying to look, I've got so many, I think there's Miller Ripper or something on the back. I feel like Surya, like all these weird notes. So I'll read it again. And I'm trying to remember where I pulled it off of. Be patient toward all that is unresolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves. Do not seek the answers which cannot be given you, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the question now. Perhaps you will gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. Yeah, it is kind of a fun one, isn't it? Yeah. So luscious. And I
That was great. I posted that in the chat, and there's also a question here that just popped up. What about if you've been sitting for over 10 years and then all of a sudden you just have no desire to sit much anymore? Do you push through or honor the desire not to sit?
great question. It's funny. I tend to tailor my answers to no, not shockingly, to the person, what I know about the person. So when I have been faced, so let me just say, when I have been faced with less than enthusiasm to arrive on my cushion, I look at the cause for that. And I also look for techniques. I'm a pleasure lover. So for me, what is pleasurable is doing a bit of reading before I sit, if I'm feeling not connected and not ready to be on the cushion. So that's one thing I do. I look for a little inspiration, whether it's poetry or a podcast. I will also sometimes go to a guided meditation. I'll pick up and sometimes somewhat randomly find a guided meditation somewhere, because sometimes someone else's voice and language begins to speak to me. I do different practices. So there may be weeks at a time where I will do mostly just sitting, as we did today. Sometimes I'll find I need just some really basic 5-stage loving kindness. And I may do that for a while as just a full 5 stages, very structured, loving kindness. I will do walking meditation instead, or mindfulness movement practice, as a way to honor the fact that maybe the body there's something that needs to kind of move through physically. So I look for those other modalities. I also then give myself permission, frankly, to not have a good sit. I'm just going to sit here, And I just make it sure it's not too long that it becomes miserable. I've also found when I was early on in my practice, the teacher at the time was very structured in terms of a breath practice, and there was a counting portion. So you would count in breaths, and you'd count out breaths. Then you'd have kind of a section open sitting. And I was exposed to this kind of form about a year after I'd started sitting with a very open practice like this, because I kind of started with an open practice. And I was finding the counting miserable. I'm like, I'm a lawyer. I concentrate all day. I don't want to just concentrate. And once I realized that, and I went to the teacher and said that this counting is not working for me, because all I do is have tension in the body. I don't like it. This is not where I need to be. And I had an honest conversation with the teacher. It's like, oh, well, just don't count. Just do the breath. I'm like, okay, good. Happiness. Woo. So kind of depends on what your sticking point is. If it's, you know, if it's been 10 years, then you've probably got some maturity to know when it's just distraction or you're trying to move away from something that's uncomfortable. On the other hand, I have employed any number of modalities to maintain that interest and that love. And that's the tricky part, is really understanding when you're just trying to run away from something that's uncomfortable or distracting versus there's something that needs to evolve and move, and maybe you just need to give it a little lusciousness. And I'm all for lusciousness and playfulness, rather than just, because, you know, and particularly in the United States, we tend to be a bit type A-ish, you know, oh, I'm just going to plow through this. And that's not how I have found it useful for me to move through the world, frankly, in any venue. So, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'm getting the signals from Menla over here
Good.
that it's time to wrap up, and I see that you have your hand raised there, Glenda, but maybe we'll save it for next week if that's okay. And I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank Suzanne in particular for leading a beautiful practice. We can all bring our hands together or share emojis on
Yep.
our Zoom so she can see. Beautiful practice. Thank you again for that. Please don't forget to, if you have any interest in the upcoming retreats or the last masterclass, you can register online. And if not, we will see you at a future Sunday meditation town hall down the road. So blessings to you all. Have a great week. Thanks again, Suzanne. And may the Buddha be with you. Cheers all. Bye.